In this video, we're going to focus on how we can create a cumulative sum line, but what will be very interesting, we're going to use one line or like one data set as our base, and from there on, we're going to build that up with a cumulative sum here, and then we deduct that as well, and building 3 different lines based on that. So let's start to look how to do this. So let's start to look here now how we can create the cumulative sum line in Chart.js. So the first thing what we need is we need to get the boiler template, which you can find here on chartjs3.com getting started. This link you can find as well in the description box. Once you're on here, copy this boiler template, copy this. If you want to understand the boiler template, please watch this video here. I'll paste this all in there, then I will cut this out and put the title in here. And then we're going to say here 80% to maximize the chart. There we are. What I will do is I will create a line chart, and eventually what I want to have is 3 independent lines. One line will be based on the data. The second line will be a sum value of the data. And the third line will be a deduction of that sum line. So let's scroll down here and let's say here a line chart. Save, refresh. So now we have this here. Let's start to build our data. What I will do here, I'll just make here a independent here. I'll just say here data points, enter, and then we're going to say a constant data set object equals this, and then we say data object, and then here array, and oh sorry, this should be an array as well. And the reason why is we're going to create an array within an array. So I'm getting ahead of myself, sorry about that. Let's do this, brackets, and then I will just cut this, put that in here. So the reason why we're going to create an array, because we want to push certain values within this data array here. So what I'm going to do here now is quite simple. I'm just going to grab this item. We can just cut this out, put it in here, and then what I'm going to say here is the following. I'm going to put that in here. So to do this, we're going to say the dataset object dot data and an index number 0. Because right now we have this data and we want to grab the array value, which is index 0. Save this, refresh, and you can see nothing truly happens visually, but behind the scenes we have here a adjustment. Alright, so now what we could do here, for example, is this. I'm going to show you. Let's copy this and let's make this number 9 for now. And later on I'm going to adjust this and say here number 1. Save, refresh, and you can see here now it has been adjusted, and this is now value of 9 instead of 18. Alright, this works. But of course, I want to create a formula for this. So how do we do this? Well, basically I'm going to say enter, enter, and then, so what we're going to do now is basically what we have to do here first, a cumulative sum of this into an array here. To do that, what we have to do is we have to create a formula for this first. So in here, what I'm going to say here, I'm going to say a constant, and I'm going to say accumulate, and I'm going to say here create an equal array. And this array will be basically our item. So we're going to say array.map. So basically, within here, whatever the array is, and later on we're going to set up the array, which will be basically this item, or more specifically, this one here, because this will not exist. And then what I'm going to say here, this array map, we'll say a sum value. And this sounds all very complicated, but just follow along. And say for this value, what we will do is we're going to push that into sum plus equal value. So basically what we're doing is every value within the array, we're going to calculate, we'll grab that value, and then the sum will be summing them up consistently. So basically this value, whatever the value is, 18, and then after the next value would be added here based and added on the sum value, so 18 plus, etc., etc. Sounds all complicated. For me, this is also quite complicated. However, follow along and it will work. So once we have this, then what I want to do here is I say constant, and then I'm going to say here the, let's say here, cumulative sum array. And this here is basically the function, which is the constant of accumulate. And then in here, we're going to grab basically the array. What is the array? That's this one here. Grab this, or more specifically, remember this one we had with 0. We're going to grab all of this together, excluding the comma. Put it in here. So this is the formula, or this is the array that we're using for the formula. So once we did this, what I want to do here afterwards is this. We're going to say here, this data set, or maybe even like this specifically here, because that's basically the object and then data. And what I want to do is I want to push a new value within here. So what I'm going to say here is dot push. And what are we going to push here? Basically, the constant of cumulative sum array. So once we do this, let's do here console log. And then we're going to say here now, the dataset object dot data, save, refresh. Open up developer tab, and you can see here now, and let me just make sure you can see this nice and clear. Zoom in, click on this, and you can see here we get our values. It shows now all of these values and the total here. So this is the sum value and this is the value individually. Alright, so this is already confirmed working. So what I want to do now is the final one, and that was a specific request as well, is to put another item in here, but with the deduction of whatever we have here, -5. So basically we have like a bracket where, or the region where the value should be within, or something like that. I have no idea what's the logic behind it, but something like that, most likely. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say here now, constant, and let's call this our third line or line 3. This will be basically the following. What I want to do here is I want to grab here the cumulative sum array, which is the value that we have. But then what I want to do as well is I want to say a dot map. Basically, I'm going to loop through again here using the map function, looping through every specific value, and then we're going to say here value will be equal to, or when we have the value, and then we have the fat arrow functionality, or the arrow function expression, something like that. And what we're going to do here is I want to get this value, and we can do a console log. You can see here we will loop through all of these values, and then I want to deduct them eventually. So let's close this, or remove this one here, and only look at this one here. If I save this, refresh, you can see here we're getting all of these values that we have calculated like a cumulative sum. So this works, but then what I want to do is I want to say -5. Let's save this, refresh, there we are. However, we're not done yet, because what I want to do is I want to say line number 3 will be equal to an array of this. So how do we do that? Well, basically we're going to say here the return value of this. So once we did this, if I do a console log, and I'm going to say here line number 3, save, refresh. You can see here now this is deducted from the total sum, or basically from this cumulative sum array. So now it works. Well, of course what we have to do here is same like this. I'm going to grab this, and then, or maybe what we could even do like this. Yeah, I'm going to cut that out, put it in here. We have this, because this is the first one we want to push. The next one I want to push is, let's put a comma here, and just say line number 3. So once we did this, what I can do now is say this dataset object, that's this one here, and let's remove this. Basically what I'm doing now is we're going to add up this one and that one, both of them, and then we're going to do a console log, refresh. You can see here we have 3 arrays, each have 7 values, and if I look at it and compare, this one here is the cumulative sum based on whatever we have here, and this here below is the deduction of 5 from this one here, from the cumulative sum. Alright, so this works. Final item now, of course, is the data set. So what I'm just going to do is just simple. Basically we could push the values in there, but I'm just going to grab this and just say a comma, because the most important part we already did. So what I'm going to do here is let's remove, give it a different color, each of those. There we are, and we say this one number 2, and this will be the black line cells. Then we have another one here, this will be the blue line cells. There we are, number 1, and we say here blue cells. And finally we have the red cells here and there. Let's save this, let's make this red, save, refresh. So now, as you can see here now, we get all the values here, and this one here of course starts here together, and afterwards it starts to have a different value. And that's basically how you can create these 3 lines here. So if you enjoyed this video, what I would recommend as well, maybe if you're using, for example, you want to have a stack bar chart and you want to calculate the cumulative sum as well, in that case I'm going to recommend you this specific video here, where you can show these data points, your data labels nicely.